Charles Galda. Welcome to Vision New England's Church in Action program. This week, we're talking with Gina Mueller about an equipping event she's putting together for women in Christian leadership on October 18th in Avon, Connecticut. Gina is the disciple-making catalyst at Vision New England. She has more than 2 decades experience in a variety of leadership roles and in a number of ministries. And she's been working with other key female leaders to develop this event to equip, support, and encourage women in Christian leadership. Gina, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And so, Gina, can you maybe share a little bit about your background for folks who don't know you? Where are you from? How'd you get here? What do you do?
Yeah, so have been in ministry more than 20 years, have led in large church ministry, helped plant a church, have multiplied smaller expressions of scattered church. And throughout my leadership story, I feel like one of the kind of markers for me is I was given much more leadership responsibility and authority than I really felt ready for from a very young age. So by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was leading a staff of 10. By the time I was in my 30s, I was leading a regional and then a national organization and coaching leaders and churches nationally. And so that's part of my story that I'm sure that we'll talk about.
Cool. And you are where? Doing what?
So my family and I live in Southern Maine. We are Midwesterners by nature and have moved out to New England in the last 5 years. Definitely feel called to the place of New England. And so my family and I live in Southern Maine.
Cool. And so you've led locally, regionally, nationally over the past 20 years, as we've both already mentioned. As you think back on that time, are there key moments or factors that were significant in developing you as a leader, getting you where you are today, important in your walk as a leader? Talk a little about some examples of that, if you would.
Yeah, there's a few that I think of. And a couple of them are true both for me as well as many other women leaders that I talk to as well. So one of the key moments or even components, I think, of my leadership story is there's been a few key people that have played the role of observing my gifts and skill sets and naming them for me, even when I couldn't see them in myself. And so there throughout especially in the early days, there were some very key people in my life that named very specific things that they saw in me before I was able to identify that in myself. So that was a really key thing. And the other thing that I recognize is there were key moments where other people in positions of influence and authority, and I would even say particularly men that I was working with or who were alongside of me in some way, who had positions of influence and authority, opened doors for me and offered opportunity for me to lead. And so that happened a number of times throughout my story. And again, that's something that's true for me, and I find is an element that seems to be a common theme for other women leaders as well. And so I mentioned all throughout my kind of leadership story, I always personally felt like I was given much more responsibility and authority and kind of leadership space for me to lead in, more than I felt ready for at the time. And the way that I talk about it is I felt like every time that happened, it was an obedient yes before the Lord, because I felt like he was inviting me into that space, even though I personally didn't feel ready for it yet. And so the way that I describe it is I felt like I had to swallow it. You know, the thing that in the back of your throat, and you just have to kind of gulp it down and say, all right, Lord, I'm trusting you in this. But there was this moment where this very significant moment with the Lord where I remember it vividly. There are very few moments that I feel like I've heard almost the audible voice of the Lord. Like, that doesn't happen to me very often.
Okay.
This was one of them. And there was this moment where I felt like the Lord said, Gina, people pleasing and fear of failure are not compatible with the scope of your calling. And so together we're going to rip them out at the root. And that felt like a very strong, those are strong words. We're going to rip them out at the root. And it was a together kind of word, like together we're going to work at this. And the more that I thought about that and prayed into that, I recognized like mowing them off like weeds, mowing them off at the top means that they'll continue to sprout up and grow up. And the Lord was like, yeah, for the things that I've called you to, those things aren't going to work. So we're going to have to rip those things out. So I feel like that moment with the Lord was another significant piece of me truly being able to step into the things that the Lord's called me to.
So let's unpack those a little bit. So when we go back to the first thing you listed, which was people identifying things in you, are you talking about skill sets, gifts, attributes, style? What kind of things are we talking about in that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes all the way back to my early high school days. And so I had a youth pastor who recognized leadership potential in me, even as a high school kid. And so he would offer me opportunities of investment, but also small little ways that I can help lead things in small, appropriate ways as a high school kid. And then, throughout college and then into my early career, there were people that would name specific either gifts or skill sets or things that they saw in me, or things that were not yet fully baked or fully developed, but they saw potential for those things. And so they would offer both investment, but also opportunity.
So if we go back to that first one, is that as clear as a specific conversation of Gina? I see that you have natural leadership skills, and that's something to develop and lean into. Is it that kind of a conversation, or was it more nuanced?
Yeah, I think with that one and with others, I think it was the gift for me was having leaders actually in a conversation name things that they saw in me. And for me, words of affirmation really matter deeply to me, especially with those that I respect. And so having leaders or people that are close to me name specific things that they saw in me was really foundational.
And would you say when they're saying that, you're like, I had no idea? Or were you self-aware enough that you would say, well, I kind of knew it, but it's significant that somebody is seeing it and affirming it?
Yeah, I would say the second. Like I knew and understood that I had, the makings of those leadership gifts. But if we're not careful, we can either hide them or think that they're insignificant or whatever, or we can, there's a whole battle, I think, for women of feeling both not enough and too much. And so that's one of the wrestles that oftentimes women leaders run into is you feel this tug of war internally all the time of I feel like I'm not enough for this thing before me that God is putting in front of me, or whatever this opportunity, I feel not enough for this thing. Or there's moments where you feel like you're too much, and so you're processing like, am I coming across too assertive? Am I coming across too capable? Like there's such a wrestle, and sometimes we feel both of those things at the same time. And so having other people of influence in my life put language to things that might have felt like a wrestle internally, and wrestling with my gifting was really helpful for me to actually be able to unapologetically step into those things.
Well, talk a little bit, because I want to come back to this and pick out see if we can get at the nuance of the difference between men and women on this, because I think some of the same themes are there for men, but I think women experience it different or talk about it different. I want to pick at that a little bit, but let's start with you talking about what you think some of those differences have been in your life, that this has been different for you because you're a woman, or that when you talk with other women in leadership, because I know you're connected with other women in big national ministries too, what are some common themes you would point in that to say this is specific to women? Men don't deal with it, or don't deal with it the same way.
I think that there's a lot of things that we could talk about with that. There's one, if we're talking about whether it's the internal wrestle, I think we're all going to experience that to a certain degree. I think there's a wrestle around gender expectations for women that make the too much not enough stuff a little bit complicated. And so there's a thing that we wrestle with of like, well, I'm supposed to be sweet, but what if my leadership gifting is a little bit more ambitious than just being sweet and smiley, right? And I don't mean that we shouldn't engage with joy and love and all of those things, but I think that there's a bit of a gender expectation around them that, frankly, for men is there, but in a different way, perhaps in the opposite way. And so I think naming those things is helpful for both men and women. But I think naming those things and actually engaging with that is really helpful. There's so much that we could talk about. But one of the other challenges that I'll maybe share a story to describe my own experience with it. But one of the challenges that I think women experience is the access that we get to investment. And one of the things that I observe is that sometimes quote unquote good boundaries can set the terms for what investment or access look like for women, rather than simply like sheer commitment to raising up women leaders and equipping them and finding a way to do that in a way that is, full of wisdom. So I'll share a story to kind of explain what I mean. When I was a young leader, so in my late 20s, early 30s, I was at that time getting trained in as a national communicator for a ministry that I was leading in. And one of the key leaders that was investing in me and training in me was a super seasoned male leader that I was working alongside. And the training for me to get trained in as a national communicator obviously included travel. And so in a conversation between he and I, he's like, look, I don't travel alone with women. And I'm thinking, that's super fair. Makes sense. Makes sense for personal boundaries around riding alone in a car or, awkward moments of checking into hotel rooms. Like, I get it. It super makes sense. And so with him and his kind of investment and training at that point with me, it could have just ended there. And then I don't get actually the investment that I could have had. It could have just ended there. But because he was creative in just his commitment to, okay, she's got potential, so let's figure out a way. I still don't travel alone with women, so we're not budging on that. But instead, he found a way to bring other people along with us. And so it wasn't just the two of us traveling, it was more of us. So in the end, I got the training that I needed, the investment that I needed so that I could step into that part of, what I was called to do at that season. So that's super common. Things like that happen all the time.
Because so many people, right? Gordon MacDonald has talked about this, but I can't think of any leader that we've talked to, interviewed, interacted with. There's other people in their lives, whether they're officially in a mentoring role or a coaching role, or whether they just step in and play that role for a while. But there's people who are opening doors, who are equipping you, who are giving you feedback, who are developing you, who are challenging you, who are giving you tough jobs to do, all that kind of stuff. And
That's right.
what I hear you saying is that one way that can play out when we couple it with what became maybe unfairly called the Billy Graham rule is that, well, then you just get shut out of all of that because I can't have dinner with you. I can't travel with you. I can't, do this, whatever it is. I can't do these things. I can't be with you one-on-one alone for reasons that are not ill-intentioned.
Right.
But the byproduct of that, if I don't compensate for it, is I shut you out of the opportunities to be able to lead and exercise what God's calling you to do.
That's right.
And so one thing, what I hear you saying that men can be doing who are in leadership is making sure if that's our rule, right? Making sure we're compensating for that.
Yes.
What are other things we could be doing?
So a few things that I think about. women notoriously will not invest, like pay for personal investment. That's been my experience for so long. And so if there's men in positions of leadership where there's women on your team, or you're married to a female leader who, if there's a way for you to pay for women to get the investment that they need, offer it, find it in the budget, pay for the childcare that they need to be able to get away and make the space. So paying for women to get investment is a really big deal, because they oftentimes won't advocate for that for themselves. The other thing that I see time and time again is that I would encourage men who have women on their team or whatever, don't make decisions for them on what they have capacity for. So one of the repeating patterns that I see is men who deeply care for the women leaders around them, and they're just aware that their lives are full, right? That they've got a lot on their plate, their lives are full. And so therefore, out of, I think, care, they will pre-decide that person, that female leader doesn't have room in their life or space or capacity to do a thing. And so then they never actually get asked. And so they miss out on an opportunity just because the men around them love and care for them, and they're trying to, watch out for them. And so what I would advocate for is trust her discernment, because she might actually feel like the Lord is asking her to do that thing, and shift and move other things around to make that happen. So don't decide for her on what she's got capacity for. And then kind of the thing that we've already touched on is, if there's a female leader in your life who you observe has potential or skills that maybe just aren't fully developed yet, think about what development looks like, and ways that opportunities where she can practice that thing. So I shared a communication example of like public communicating. That's one of the things that I've done over the years. But the reality is, I wouldn't start by talking to a room of 3,000 people. I needed rooms of 20 to start. And so we need to find appropriate spaces for those skills to be able to kind of grow and develop an appropriate kind of spaces to develop different things.
Those are some great suggestions, and lead us naturally, I think, into the conversation we want to have about this event that you're putting together. And so you've got a Women's Leaders Equipping Day this fall, October 16th? 18th, thank you. Saturday the 18th in Avon, Connecticut. And so tell us about that.
Yeah, so this Women Leaders Equipping Day, it's a full day together with other leaders in the room, other women leaders in the room from all across New England who are leading in various spaces. So some of them will be leading in ministry spaces. Some of them are going to be leading in their kind of workplace or marketplace, in the schools, in community kind of spaces. And so this is an event that is geared specifically for women who are leading in the variety of spaces. Some of them might be discipling other people, investing kind of in others. So for women who really see themselves as leaders, high capacity women, oftentimes pioneers, so it's really geared towards women who are leading in various spaces. It's a full day, and we'll do a variety of things. So anytime we have it, it's going to feel like a workshop or a training space. It'll feel like a day of equipping. And so there'll be some kind of teaching as we're all trying to figure out, what does it look like for us to imitate the life and way of Jesus in the various spaces that we're leading in. Sometimes there's inner work, some character stuff that we need to tend to. Sometimes there's capacity or skill things that we need to talk about. All of us are wrestling through life and leadership spaces. So all of the kind of teaching and training is going to be kind of wrapped around, what does it look like for us to imitate the life and way of Jesus in our various leadership spaces. And then there's going to be all kinds of spaces for you to process and directly apply to the people, the teams, the different kind of spaces that you're leading in. And what I've found and what I've heard from other women as we've been kind of planning for this event, there just seems to be a real hunger to be in a room of other women who are kind of wired like you. So if you're wired with all kinds of kind of leadership gifts, there's a desire and a hunger to be in a space with other women who are kind of wired like you. So we're also going to obviously create all kinds of opportunity to connect and, deeply connect with the other women who are leading in a variety of spaces in the room.
Now, the risk with something like this is always you've got, the type A people who are going to sit there and say, well, type A people do amazing things, but none of us think we do anything amazing, right? And
yes.
So it can't be for me. And I'm not the CEO of my own marketing business. And so this isn't for me. And I'm not, and so, or I'm young. I would love to be that one day, but I'm young and have been given limited opportunity, but I think I'm a leader. Nuance it a little bit for us, if you would, about when you talk about women leaders. Is it, hey, no, look, it's if you're in the number one job in your company, your ministry, then that's for you, or is it different?
You bring up a great question. My observation is more women will self-select out and assume that they're not leaders than the other way around. And so if you are leading teams, if you're discipling other people, if you're leading groups or ministries in your church, if you're volunteering in your community and leading and have vision for things, and you feel like the Lord has put in you dreams and ambitions and goals and things to lead, whether or not they have come to full fruition, you should be in the room.
And leading involves things like if you're the convener, if you're the one driving progress, if you're the ones that's laying out the vision of what we want to get to. Those are some of the things that that we would say, hey, those are the things we mean by leading. If those things are there, other things too, but those things are there, you may be a leader and not know it.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And so how will this be helpful to women? I know you talked about equipping. What are other things that are going to happen there that will be useful beyond that session?
Yeah, a couple things. So I remember the first time that I was, to be frank, there's just not a lot of spaces for women leaders to be in a space with other women leaders. And I remember the first time that I was invited into a space like that. I'm not a feeler. And I remember sitting in the front row just weeping because I didn't realize how much I needed that and how lonely and isolated and like shriveled up dry I felt. I just didn't know because you just keep carrying on.
It's like when us marketplace people who never around a Christian in our job suddenly find out the guy down the hall is a Christian. It's like, this is so cool, right? It's okay.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I just didn't know. And so me, who's not a feeler and hates crying in public, I was just like a weepy mess in the front row. So anyway, if that sounds like a life-giving space for you, this is going to be, a great thing for you to consider. The other thing is an event is just an event, right? But one of the really key ongoing things for me, we already talked about having other people kind of name gifts and skill sets, and that having other people in your life who see things and name things is really helpful. But one of the other spaces for me that has been a lifeline is either having a female leader invest in me, or I have an ongoing group of women leaders that I meet with weekly who have permission. We've developed deep relationship over time. Those women have permission to challenge me and call me on my stuff. And I feel like it's a dangerous space for leaders. The more kind of responsibility and authority, the more that our leadership scope grows, there's a temptation to pull ourselves out of accountable relationships. And I think that's a dangerous place for men and women. And so coming out of this equipping weekend, we'll have huddle spaces that will be places of investment for women who are looking for that as well.
Yeah. And I always think about, we see in all of our events, it's now that I know you, or now that I met so-and-so, I'm dealing with this issue. I can just reach out and call that person because I feel like I've got enough of a relationship and get some wisdom, get some feedback, have a sounding board, whatever it might be.
That's right.
And so I'm excited about it. Thank you, Gina, for doing it. And there's a number of women working with you on it, I know, in different roles across New England. And so thank you to them. I don't know if you want to mention them now or if that's not a good idea because you might leave somebody out and that would be a bad thing. So we'll leave that. But there's a really good group of women putting this together. So Gina, thanks for taking the lead on doing it. And so remind folks when and where it is and where they can learn more and register.
Yeah, so Women Leaders Equipping Day, October 18th in Avon, Connecticut. And you can find more information if you go to visionnewengland.org and click on the events tab. You'll be able to find the event. It'll take you to more info and registration.
That's terrific. Gina, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
To support this program and accelerate evangelism, go to visionnewengland.org and click on Donate, or click Member to become a partner with us. This program is supported by the Palau Association, who are dedicated to proclaiming the good news, uniting the church, and impacting cities worldwide.
At Leadership Transformations, we believe that when you have the right resources to help you slow down and experience a deep and refreshing connection to God, you can become the discerning leader you know you are created to be. Friends, Steve Macchia here, and I have a free gift for your soul. It's called Pathways. Pathways is our weekly email aimed at offering you soul-nourishing content for the journey. It contains readings, prayers, spiritual practices, a link to the Discerning Leader podcast, as well as information about all of our upcoming soul care retreats, workshops, and online offerings. So head on over to leadershiptransformations.org today and sign up for this free resource. It will help you slow down and be more. God bless you, friends.